Brock Lesnar brutally attacks Roman Reigns with Seth Rollins on Raw. The impossible just happened. Brock Lesnar and Seth Rollins, two men who have hated each other for over a decade, just formed the most shocking alliance in WWE history to deliver the most brutal beatdown Roman Reigns has ever experienced. The systematic destruction these former enemies unleashed on the tribal chief wasn't just shocking, it was a calculated execution designed to end Roman's dominance forever. When you see the level of violence these two brought to Monday Night Raw and hear what this unholy alliance means for WWE's future, you're going to be absolutely furious at the betrayal and terrified of what comes next. The sight of Brock Lesnar and Seth Rollins standing side by side wasn't just unexpected, it was the collision of hatred, ambition, and mutual desire to destroy the one man who has held them both back from achieving their ultimate goals. The crowd's reaction shifted from confusion to absolute shock as they realized these lifetime rivals had put aside their differences for one purpose: to permanently eliminate Roman Reigns from the top of WWE's hierarchy through coordinated violence that no single wrestler could survive. What makes this attack so much more devastating than typical WWE beatdowns is how Brock and Seth combined their completely different fighting styles into a symphony of destruction that exploited every one of Roman's weaknesses. The Beast's raw power combined with the Architect's technical precision created an assault so perfectly orchestrated that Roman had absolutely no chance of defending himself or escaping the trap they had set. But here's what's going to make your blood boil with rage: this alliance between Brock and Seth wasn't spontaneous or born from coincidence. According to multiple backstage sources who are risking everything to reveal this information, these two mortal enemies had been secretly meeting for weeks, planning every detail of how to lure Roman into a situation where his bloodline protection wouldn't save him and his legendary toughness would be overwhelmed by their combined assault. The setup for this attack was absolutely genius in its deviousness. Seth Rollins started the show by cutting a promo about finally earning respect as WWE's top performer, drawing Roman out to confront him about who really deserves the designation. The verbal confrontation seemed typical of their rivalry, competitive but controlled, until Brock's music hit and the Beast walked out with an expression that made everyone understand something catastrophic was about to happen. "Roman, you thought you were untouchable? You thought nobody could overcome the tribal chief? Watch what happens when your worst nightmares join forces." Seth's declaration before the attack began was delivered with such sinister satisfaction that it became immediately clear this had been planned as the ultimate betrayal of trust and exploitation of Roman's competitive pride. The first suplex from Brock was delivered with such devastating force that Roman's body seemed to fold unnaturally before crashing into the canvas. But before the tribal chief could even attempt to recover, Seth was already delivering a curb stomp that drove Roman's face into the mat with sickening impact. The coordinated timing between these two showed countless hours of practice and planning that made their assault feel more like a military operation than a wrestling attack. But the most brutal aspect of this beatdown was how Brock and Seth took turns holding Roman in position while the other delivered punishment, creating a systematic destruction that prevented any possibility of comeback or escape. Every time Roman tried to fight back against one attacker, the other would blindside him with devastating offense that kept him completely defensified and vulnerable to continued assault. The psychology behind their attack strategy was absolutely terrifying because it demonstrated intimate knowledge of Roman's fighting style and defensive capabilities. They knew exactly when he would attempt his comeback sequences, precisely which moves he would try to counter with, and specifically how to neutralize his legendary resilience through coordinated violence that gave him no opening to mount any effective resistance. What makes this alliance even more shocking is how it represents a complete reversal of over a decade of personal animosity between Brock and Seth. These two have been involved in some of WWE's most heated rivalries, with legitimate bad blood that everyone assumed would prevent them from ever working together under any circumstances. Their willingness to put aside that hatred reveals just how much they both want to eliminate Roman from the top of WWE's hierarchy. The crowd's reaction throughout this assault was a mixture of genuine shock, horror at the violence, and disbelief that Brock and Seth were actually working together. Fans who had cheered for both men at various points in their careers were now witnessing them commit an act of such calculated cruelty that it was impossible to view either as anything other than villains willing to cross any line to achieve their goals. The most devastating moment came when Brock delivered an F5 to Roman, but instead of going for a pin, he held the tribal chief in position so Seth could climb to the top rope and deliver a frog splash that drove every bit of air from Roman's lungs. The coordination and trust required for that sequence proved this alliance was built on genuine mutual respect and shared purpose rather than temporary convenience. But here's where this situation becomes absolutely insane. As Brock and Seth were delivering their final assault, every member of the bloodline who tried to intervene was met with the same coordinated violence that had destroyed their tribal chief. The Usos, Solo Sikoa, and even Paul Heyman were all systematically neutralized by this unholy alliance that had apparently planned for every possible interference and countermeasure. The medical attention Roman required after this attack was extensive and immediately visible, with trainers rushing to assess potential injuries from the sustained violence he had endured. The fact that Roman couldn't stand on his own and had to be helped backstage created genuine concern that Brock and Seth's assault had caused damage severe enough to threaten his ability to continue as WWE's top star. Industry veterans are calling this one of the most shocking alliances in wrestling history because it defies every expectation about personal rivalries and long-term feuds. The willingness of two men who genuinely dislike each other to work together demonstrates that their shared hatred of Roman Reigns exceeds their personal animosity, creating a threat that may be impossible for even the tribal chief to overcome. The backstage implications of this alliance are absolutely massive because it forces every other wrestler to reconsider their own positions and alliances. If Brock and Seth can put aside their differences to eliminate a common enemy, what other unexpected partnerships might form? The political landscape of WWE has been completely destabilized by this development. Seth Rollins' motivation for this alliance appears to be based on years of frustration over being overshadowed by Roman despite being equally talented and accomplished. His willingness to ally with Brock, someone who has dominated him repeatedly, reveals how desperate he is to finally achieve the recognition he feels he deserves by eliminating the one man who stands in his way. Brock Lesnar's motivation is more straightforward. He views Roman as the only remaining challenge to his legacy as WWE's most dominant force. By forming this alliance, Brock ensures that he can finally defeat the tribal chief decisively and reclaim his position as the undisputed alpha male of professional wrestling without any questions or asterisks. The financial implications for WWE are potentially staggering because this alliance creates immediate must-see television and pay-per-view matches that could generate massive revenue. The novelty of Brock and Seth working together, combined with the question of whether Roman can overcome their coordinated assault, provides storytelling opportunities that extend for months. Social media reaction has been absolutely explosive, with wrestling fans expressing everything from shock to outrage to excitement about this unexpected development. The polarized response guarantees continued discussion and engagement that will drive viewership for weeks as audiences tune in to see how Roman responds and whether this alliance can be stopped. The long-term booking possibilities are virtually unlimited because this alliance creates threats to every championship, faction, and power structure in WWE. Brock and Seth working together could dominate both singles and tag team divisions, while their rivalry with Roman provides the emotional core that keeps audiences invested in the outcome. Roman Reigns' response to this attack will be absolutely critical for maintaining his status as the tribal chief and proving he can overcome even the most dangerous alliance through superior strategy and family support. His ability to divide Brock and Seth or find allies capable of matching their combined power will determine whether his reign continues or ends. Quick question for the comments: do you think Brock Lesnar and Seth Rollins can maintain their alliance long enough to permanently eliminate Roman Reigns, or will their personal hatred eventually tear them apart? Let me know your predictions below. And here's another one: who in WWE could possibly help Roman Reigns overcome this deadly alliance? Cody Rhodes, The Rock, or someone else entirely? Drop your thoughts in the comments.